been thinking a lot about social awareness lately because it's one of those things people almost always talk about as if it's automatically a good thing. If you're socially aware, people assume you're emotionally intelligent, mature, observant, and all those things can be true, but I don't think people talk enough about the weight that it can come with. I've always felt like I notice things, not because I'm trying to be nosy or because I'm sitting there studying everybody, but it's just how my mind works. I've noticed when somebody's energy changes. I've noticed when conversation suddenly feels different. I've noticed when someone seems interested in talking to everybody except one person. I've noticed when somebody says they're fine, but everything about the way they carry themselves says otherwise. And for a long time, I thought everybody noticed those things too. Then I started realizing that a lot of people generally don't. They experience a conversation and just move on. Meanwhile, I still think about every conversation, every moment, every situation, every certain event that occurred in my life for about hours and months, sometimes years, figuring out why something felt off, where something went wrong. And being socially aware is not just noticing what's happening, but understanding what it might mean, right? Like, I notice when somebody gets quiet during a conversation, and then I try to understand how everybody responds to them getting quiet, the tension that follows, and I start putting together a bigger picture that probably wasn't there. And the problem is that your brain, like my brain, does it naturally. It doesn't always know when to stop. It's like I created this whole perspective in my head based on the little things that I'm noticing around me. And it's something that I don't even know how to turn it off. And one thing I realized from being socially aware is that it can slowly pull you out of your own life if you're not careful. You stop just having conversations and really start analyzing all of them. You stop just meeting people and start trying to understand them. You stop being present and start paying attention to everything happen underneath the surface. And at first it feels like growth because you're understanding people better. And it does help you understand people better. You catch things about people's certain behaviors that I guess wouldn't be as obvious to others. However, eventually it can become very exhausting because you're carrying information you never asked for. And now it's kind of just ruins the moment for yourself. I remember there were times when I walked in a room and before I could even enjoy being there, my mind was already working. Who's comfortable, who isn't? Why does that one person seem irritated? Why does this interaction feel so forced? Why did this comment change the energy? It's strange because on one hand, those observations can be helpful, but on the other hand, they make it harder to simply exist. Sometimes I honestly envy people who can just enjoy a moment without trying to understand every layer of it. The thing that makes social awareness difficult is that once you start seeing certain patterns, you can't really unsee them. It's like they don't really get out your head. You kind of have to pretend like you don't see it. You begin recognizing insecurities in places you never noticed before. You start seeing how much people crave for validation. You notice how often people pretend to be okay. You notice how much of social life is people trying to protect themselves or impress others or avoid rejection or hide something they're struggling with. Most people are carrying something. They're just carrying it differently. And there's another reason social awareness has become heavy, at least for someone like me. The more you understand people, the harder it becomes to judge them quickly. Behaviors usually have a story behind them. The rudest person might have deep insecurities. The quiet person might be dealing and fighting battles nobody knows about. The person who's always trying to prove themselves might secretly believe they're not enough. And once you start seeing things like that, people stop looking simple. But here's where I think socially aware people make a mistake. And I've definitely done this myself. We start believing that because we notice something, we're responsible for it. We feel like we need to understand every situation, solve every tension, figure everybody out, and carry emotional weight that was never ours to carry. That's when awareness becomes a burden instead of a gift. I've had seasons where being around people was more exhausting than being alone. Not because I dislike people, but because my mind never stopped processing them. Because sometimes being by myself felt easier because there was less information coming in, less analyzing, less reading between the lines, less trying to understand what everybody is feeling or thinking. And I know there are people watching this who understand exactly what I'm talking about. But in like all other things, there's a danger to it if you allow it to completely control you. Because social awareness can slowly become overthinking, which then overthinking can become anxiety if you're not careful. Then anxiety becomes isolation. You start pulling away from people because it feels simpler than constantly processing them. You become quieter, more guarded, more selective, not because you believe you're better than anybody, but because your mind is tired. And what I've been learning recently is that awareness and peace are not supposed to be enemies. For a long time, I thought the more aware I became, the more burden I was supposed to feel. But that's not wisdom. Wisdom isn't carrying everything. Wisdom is knowing what belongs to you and what doesn't. From a Christian perspective, discernment matters so much. Discernment isn't just seeing things clearly, it's seeing clearly while remaining grounded. Being able to recognize things without becoming consumed by them. God never intended for us to carry every problem we notice. He never intended for us to spend our lives trapped inside our own heads, trying to decode every person we meet. One of the hardest lessons I've learned is that not everything I notice deserves my attention. Just because I pick up on someone's insecurity, just because I recognize tension, doesn't mean that I'm responsible for fixing it. Just because I see a problem doesn't mean I need to spend the next 3 hours thinking about it. It doesn't mean it's mine to carry. Now, there are times where you should take accountability. You should recognize some parts of yourself. You should try your best to go fix things. But honestly, it's freeing to know that not everything has to be on your plate. Social awareness is at its best when it creates compassion instead of exhaustion. When it helps you understand people instead of fear them. When it teaches wisdom instead of cynicism. When it allows you to see reality clearly without stealing your ability to enjoy life. And social awareness, you don't have to get rid of it. I still notice things. I probably always will. And that's just how I'm wired. But learning that seeing everything doesn't mean carrying everything. It doesn't mean analyzing every conversation or every interaction or every person. No, there's a time and place where that's important. You should do it. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is acknowledge what you see, give it to God, and continue living. Right? Let life just be life and let it flow. Because at the end of the day, awareness is supposed to help you navigate life, not stop you from living it.